My great pleasure to introduce Chris Ashton, the co-founder of Turtle Rock and the design director on Evolve, which I have just come from playing as the monster. So if I seem a little like, please forgive me. It really is. It's one of those games where it's like, oh yeah, duh, this is a great idea, and it's something that really hasn't been explored before. Probably the closest would be your team's experience working on the Left 4 Dead series.
Yeah, that tank survivor battle.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was 45 seconds, and you probably had 18 minutes or something. There.
When I wasn't the monster, it was a long experience. Sort of. I mean, you can see kind of the logical design leap from what Left 4 Dead was to something like this. But I think what seems kind of obvious on paper is quite challenging to actually make. If you wouldn't mind kind of going through sort of the process of picking this kind of 4-on-1 multiplayer co-op and competitive multiplayer.
Particularly that the monster grows over time, puts a time stamp on the game. If the game goes very long, then it goes to his favor. If it ends very quickly, it goes to their favor. And even if 4 versus 1, without that sort of growth over time on the monster, it would be a little bit easier. So, but that's kind of the cool, that role reversal of the monster, when in the beginning you're scared and they're hunting you down and you're being chased and it's very frantic and tense. But if you can stage up, if you can eat enough things and get big enough, you can turn the tables and you totally become the hunter and you go after them and finish them off. So that role reversal winds up being like super fun and so valuable that it was worth the effort.
I kind of jumped the gun for the sake of the audience here because I'm so interested after my play experience, but if you wouldn't mind sort of describing what sort of the world of the game is. We saw a tiny slice of it, but sort of what's the underlying narrative and circumstances that bring these 4 people into clearly dangerous circumstances hunting a creature?
So this is in the future, it's sci-fi. Takes place on one planet, Planet Shear, and it's a frontier planet. It's sort of at the edge of the explored space. The humans in this aspect, they're hunters. They're kind of like wildlife. They're brought in to deal with wildlife. So when we explore these planets and we go here and we start to colonize, there's always aggressive wildlife predators, that kind of thing we need to deal with. So these guys are specialists, they're wildlife specialists, but the monsters are also alien to this planet. We don't know where they come from. They show up, we don't know what they want, why they're here. All we know is they're destroying the colonies, killing people. And so the hunters are the best we've got.
Now, obviously, when you're playing as one of the 4 hunters, you can think of you can see how this has evolved from Left 4 Dead. Everyone has a very clear class system, and cooperation really seems to be probably even more key than it was in Left 4 Dead. How did you kind of work on that balancing so that once you're separated from the group, if the monster finds you, you really are going to have a rough time in this game?
And I think we had that sort of, if you separate from the team in Left 4 Dead, then you're probably going to die. We had that similar aspect, but I think the thing that sort of became different with this one is we had so much equipment, and we wanted to go deeper on co-op, and we wanted to. In Left 4 Dead, it was sort of everybody had a gun, and we're all just moving from point A to point B. Here, if you're talking about a monster that's growing over time, how to deal with that, it becomes a more complex issue. So you've got a guy who's made to stop the monster's movement, and that's the trapper. He can put down a mobile arena and lock him into this battle. He's got a harpoon gun to slow the movement. You've got a guy, Assault, who can deal the damage. You've got a dedicated medic who can heal in multiple ways, and you've got support class who can cloak, who can be offensive or defensive and help the team. So that was a big shift for us, was having character classes, and that came about through play testing. We prototyped early. We didn't have classes to begin with, but then it was very disorganized. It's like, are you going to heal? Am I going to heal? Nobody knew what each other was doing. And as soon as we put classes in, if you choose medic, you know what your role is.
Right. Like, at least that someone's there to try and heal everybody. They still have to do their job, but they can.
Yep.
So one interesting thing that was pointed out is while we played with one particular character in each of the 4 classes, that in the final product of the game, we're actually going to see multiple characters within that class. I mean, are they going to play differently within, say, an assault class or a medic class?
Yeah. So they only share. They have 4 things. Every class has 4 things they can do. Every character has 4 things they can do. And every other character in that class, they only share one thing. So So their equipment is dramatically different. And as a result, you might have a medic that is very more heavily armored. You might have a medic who deals more damage. You might have a medic that is more stealthy, right? So we have different flavors of every class, and that takes the form of different characters in that class.
And then when you're playing the monster, in this case, what we got to play, we played Goliath, who's hulking, fast, nimble, breathes fire. It's interesting because that fulfills most of what I need out of a monster. So the idea that how many other monsters are you anticipating to have in the final version of the game?
All we're saying right now is there's more.
There's more?
We're not putting specific numbers on it, but with the first set of hunters that we have, the medic has a med gun, and that's sort of the first thing that anyone expects in a sci-fi game. Goliath is the same thing for the monsters. He's just, like you said, he's the first thing that everyone thinks of. Breathe fire, throw a rock, leap, climb, punch, right? So, but then beyond that, after you play Goliath and you start looking at the other monsters, they start to go off in much different spaces, and they all play different. And the goal was to fundamentally change the game when there's a different monster. They might move differently. They might eat at different rates. They have a completely different set of abilities. So it really does change the game. Even if I'm playing my favorite tracker, but then the monster changes, my whole game changes as a result.
Now, with you play the creature in third person, you get to see him evolve. You get kind of a better vantage point of a lot of the game space around you. But if you go back to some of the instances where people have attempted this very asymmetrical, competitive, cooperative multiplayer, and I think the Aliens versus Predator games are the ones that really try to kind of carve that out. You always saw some challenges, in the balancing, which I think has been resolved here from what I've played, but also sort of in those controls. We're so used to sort of the precision of a gun, and here you really are using, it's more than a blunt object, but it's just kind of, area attacks. I mean, that is challenging to try to get into the game and have a balance and not have it become awkward for the player. How did you try to overcome that?
It's just a lot of playing and iterating, and for the monster, for example, we were first person to begin with on the monster side of things, and then mid process, you get harpooned in the back, and a text message would show up on your screen that says you've been harpooned, right? And that's very difficult. Like, you're in the middle of a fight, you're supposed to read this message and understand what to do. As soon as you pull it out in third person, you can see the harpoon and you can react to it. So yeah, going to third person was a big one. And then from day one, we wanted the monster to feel very organic. So his abilities are all on different buttons. So it's a lot more like a fighting game, as opposed to when you're playing a human, you're used to in Battlefield or any other, you switch to the new item and then you pull the trigger to use it. The monster, he doesn't have to do that. So you can combo things very quickly, and it almost winds up being a fighting game.
And obviously the evolution of the monster, I mean, it is the name of the game. It's interesting the way that you are striking the balance, because what you really want to do is evolve very quickly, because you're going to become that much more powerful and you're going to get the upper hand. But at the same time, by doing that, you seem to be alerting all the hunters to where your presence is. And like it's interesting as I try to get my head wrapped around, okay, what is my priority here? I mean, if you wouldn't mind giving a sense of how you think the ideal way of playing a monster is.
So, from a design standpoint, what we wanted to do was make a stage. Stage 2 is toe-to-toe with the team, with the hunters. So that was like a fair fight, out of the box, 50-50 win ratio. So stage 1 is less than that, and stage 3 is more than that. So
and are there just 3 stages for the creature?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So stage 1, obviously, you're desperate to get to stage 2. And that's not to say that you can't win at stage 1. There are guys in the office that routinely win at stage 1. It's very hard to do, and there are things you can do. We have basically an outside player in the game, and that's the wildlife, and carnivorous plants, predators, that sort of thing. If I'm a stage 1 monster and you step in a plant and get killed, and now there's only 3 hunters, as soon as there's 3, that team dynamic starts to fall apart, and I can take advantage and capitalize and finish the game at stage 1 just because you guys messed up. So stage 1 can win. Even at stage 3, the hunters can win, but stage 2 is where it's sort of that 50-50. So at stage 1, I want to get to 2. Once I get to 2, I can breathe. And then if I get to 3, now I'm like super excited and aggro.
I think the other thing that may go unnoticed, but is really probably the biggest biggest difference from the Left 4 Dead series is that had a very, you had a place to get to. You're getting from A to B. Here, you're dealing with a far more open area game. Yes, there are generators and there's kind of a pressure point at the end of it.
Right.
But in terms of level design, you have a creature that's changing in size and skill,
right?
And you have hunters with jetpacks, and you can move freely around the environment. I'm curious how long it took you guys to kind of get to like a comfort zone in how you're supposed to design that level.
Yeah, I mean the levels were changing size drastically, probably for the better part of 3 years. The monster climbing was within the last, I don't know, probably year and a half, where he can very smoothly climb over anything. And so, it's an arms race, really, when you're developing the game. As soon as you make the monster be able to climb over anything, now the hunters have to be able to keep up. And so their jetpacks had to get better and better and better. So it's kind of...
So the actual design of the game between various elements of the team are almost like the hunters versus the creature. It really is mirroring the game itself.
It is, yeah. The hunters have jetpacks because they've got to be able to deal with the monster being able to climb over any obstacle.
Well, I have to say, obviously, when I came from downstairs, I truly enjoyed it. I look forward to playing more. The game is scheduled for fall of this year.
Yep, that's correct.
Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and the PC?
That's correct.
All right, well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing more of the game.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.